And we're coming to you live for the Built Ford Tough Studio. Boomer Esiason, Greg Giannotti. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan. Simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network. And wherever you are in the free Odyssey app, good Friday morning. A feel-good football Friday. That game last night had a lot more offense than we expected, even though it wasn't a lot of offense, but still some offense. Look at Bailey Zappi play football. But we move on from that because just not a great game, not great teams, does certainly affect the AFC playoff picture with the Steelers, and we turn our focus to these two football teams here that are going in different directions, and I still think that even though we know these teams aren't going to the playoffs, you've got a lot to watch for in these two games. Tommy DeVito, the Giants fight, do they end up ending on a really positive note and making the fan base proud and winning some games and thus getting a worse draft pick, but still winning these games shows you Brian Daboll's got this thing under control or not? And how are the Jets going to react with Zach Wilson back at quarterback? And is Rob Saleh, who has been under fire this entire week, going to let this whole thing melt down into a pile of nothing where the Jets have no choice but to make a change at the head coach? Or does he rally the troops himself? Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, G. I'm doing well. And thinking about this Steeler game last night, it actually affected 6 other teams in the AFC. Of course, the Browns and the Bengals in their division, the Colts and Texans in the South, and then the Broncos and the Bills when you think about it. So Pittsburgh loses to back-to-back teams that come into Pittsburgh with 2-10 records. The Cardinals on Sunday and then turn around and lose last night to the lowly Patriots and Bailey Zappi. So that's back-to-back losses to teams with 2-10 records, and no team in the history of the league that had been over 500 had ever lost back-to-back games to teams that had records of 2-10 or worse. I mean, that this last 4 days for Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers is going to be brutal. They are now outside of the playoffs. They are number 8 seed. But when you think about the Browns, the Bengals, the Colts, Texans, Broncos, and Bills, they were all sitting there going, come on, lose. Because, all these teams, this is the stretch run now, final 5 games, they're all watching every single game and how it impacts their potential playoff seedings and standings and chances to actually make it into the playoffs. And when you look at the Bengals, they got a backup quarterback. You look at the Browns, they got a backup quarterback. You look at the Colts, they got a backup quarterback. You look at the Bills. Could the Bills, who are number 11 right now, somehow, some way, at 6-6, claw themselves back into all of this? They have a bunch of teams that they have to climb over. But do you believe that Josh Allen could be one of these players that elevates this team? Because I thought he played great against Philadelphia. And if he continues to play the way he has played the last 2 weeks, they are going to be a pain in the ass to play against. Doesn't mean they're going to win all their games. But if there was one player right now that could elevate his team, it would be Josh Allen and the Bills. And they have some tough games. They have a very tough schedule to finish the season. But looking at Pittsburgh, we were saying, well, they got an easy schedule. And look what just happened to them in their last 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at both of these conferences, it's really who doesn't stink, because a lot of these teams just flat out stink. Like the Steelers stink. And the Browns now without, they're down to their 3rd, 4th string quarterback and Joe Flacco. They're now a team that stinks. The Indianapolis Colts, is that a team we're taking seriously? I'm not taking them seriously to be able to move through the playoffs with Gardner Minshew. I can't do that. And then if you think about the Houston Texans, they're fun. C.J. Stroud, we're going to get to see them up close this week, but they lose Tank Dell. This is obviously the first year with D'Amico Ryans and C.J. Stroud. It's great to watch entertaining football, but can I take them seriously? So the point I'm making is, yes, the Buffalo Bills have a history of winning the last couple of years. They've got that base. They've got a coach who has been there, who was under fire for some really weird comments a couple of years ago. Did you see that story? Well, if you didn't see it, I'll explain it to you. He had to address comments from 2019 that he made that are completely bizarre and strange, but we'll get to that a little bit later. And they've got one of the top quarterbacks in football when he's not turning the football over, is an MVP caliber type of guy. So they needed to beat Philadelphia, even though it was a game that was out of conference. That would have been the statement game to tell people they were back and they couldn't finish the job there. So I'm still very skeptical about them, but to answer your question, yes, they can be a team that I could see get hot, get on a run, win some of these tough games, make those statements, and then all of a sudden ride that wave all the way to Vegas. I could absolutely see that happening because most of these teams, outside of Kansas City, Baltimore, Miami, I don't really believe in at all in the AFC. Not one bit. So sure, Buffalo, who is always in that conversation and was in that conversation before the season, as long as they've mathematically got a shot and can win some games here, so it could certainly be talked about deep into January.
All right, here's another team that I'm going to bring up, okay, and this is going to be Jacksonville. Everybody thinks Jacksonville is running away with the AFC South. Everybody thinks it right now. All of a sudden, Trevor Lawrence is hurt. I'm not sure about his updated status, but they have to go to Cleveland, and then they have to play Baltimore.
Yeah.
So this is a team that could be from 8-4. Actually, they were 8-3.
Yeah.
They lost last week, and they could lose the next 2 weeks, and they could fall to you're talking about 8-6 now, and all of a sudden they get into maybe they don't run away with the AFC South. Maybe they're now involved in the AFC wild card race as opposed to winning that division.
Yeah, and that's another one of those situations, though, where I do not believe in that team at all. And if they have to play now some of these tougher games, as you mentioned, with C.J. Beathard as the quarterback, I mean, it's just another example of a good team losing a starting quarterback this year and then turning into a team we don't take seriously.
Right, so I think there were 4 teams that started 0-4, only one of the 0-3, I should say. Started 0-3, and only one of those teams presently occupies a playoff spot, and that's your Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, and they're hanging on by a thread right now after a two-game losing streak. And the Green Bay Packers are coming up, but that's the point of the NFC, too. Those are teams I'm not taking seriously. I'm not taking the Packers seriously. I'm not taking the Vikings seriously.
So we have seen guys go down left and right, and we've seen teams that just have not found their game at all just yet. And there are teams that are starting to find their game, and one of those teams happens to be Green Bay. I mean, they're literally finding their game. Their quarterback has been awesome the last 3 weeks, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. He looks like the real deal. I want to say with 10 games to go, Brian Gutekunst, their general manager, wanted to know, well, we don't know if we have our quarterback. We got to see whether or not we have our quarterback. They're 4-1 in their last 5, 3-0 in their last 3. And he has been spot on. I mean, he has been like the light went on for him, it looked like. So if he can keep that going, I mean, they're going to be a team that is going to make it to the playoffs. They're going to ride the hot hand, and they're going to go all the way to the playoffs. And again, the schedule, it doesn't really matter. But when you look at the teams that they play, you'd like to think that they're going to be favored in most of them. And if they are and they win, guess who's going to be back in the playoffs?
Yeah, sure. And that wouldn't surprise me. But then also they're just not in the class, at least not right now, with the 49ers, the Eagles, and the Cowboys. And I don't even put Detroit in that class right now either. I mean, I think the difference between the top teams and that second tier of teams is larger than it's been in both conferences in a number of years. I just don't – there's so many of these games that we're going to see in the playoffs that are going to have large spreads because it's just – you're just not going to be able to believe that a team can go in there into San Francisco and end up winning a playoff game.
Here's a team for you. I'll give you this one. How about the Rams? The Rams are now 6-6. They're just outside.
Well, what are they going to do with
Matthew
NFC?
Stafford,
what
Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp? I mean, they hammered Cleveland last week.
Do you really believe that when we're in Vegas at the Wynn doing the shows that week, that the NFC will have a representative other than the Niners, the Eagles, or the Cowboys?
No, I don't.
There's no way.
Not as we sit here right now.
Well, the only thing that could change that is injury. That's it.
Well, and that has happened all over the league.
But we can't predict that. So if you want to tell me, and if all three of those quarterbacks aren't going to get hurt, like Dak, Jalen Hurts, and Brock Purdy aren't all going to get hurt.
Well,
that would be horrible for football.
I think it was David Carr on the NFL Network said that Jalen Hurts should be benched because he's injured.
Yeah, I mean.
They should play Marcus Mariota until Jalen Hurts gets healthy again.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Okay.
Ridiculous take.
Okay.
That was just a ridiculous take. I mean, that guy is fighting through, still playing great football. He's everything you want your quarterback to be. They've got huge games. Obviously, they just had a huge game where they got their asses kicked by the 49ers. They got another huge game here. You're going to sit that guy down when you're fighting for a 1 seed in the NFC. It's just
all right.
A dumb take.
Just so you know, the Rams are at Baltimore this week. And then they got Washington and New Orleans in their building. And then They're at the Giants.
Yeah, I mean.
And then they finish up with the 49ers, and who knows whether or not that game means anything to the 49ers.
It's nice for your team to get into the playoffs. It's nice to have these games at the end of the year.
Well, look
mean
at the Giants
something.
last year. This is what you're talking about. You're
Right.
talking about a Giant team that goes into the playoffs, wipes out a weak Minnesota team,
Yep.
and then gets wiped out by a very strong Philadelphia Eagle team.
That is right. And
That's kind of like you're talking about that
it's
scenario.
right, and it's nice. And then you squeak in, fine. You get a home playoff game, maybe. You get to have a playoff game, period, for your fan base. You feel like you're on the right track. Like, all those things are good, but the haves and the have-nots are clear. And this is not a year we're having one of these Cinderella teams come out of nowhere and go on a run. I am fully convinced of that. And the team that would be maybe closest to that could be Detroit, but I don't trust
What
them
about
at all.
Buffalo?
But would you really consider them a Cinderella team?
Well, the way things have gone for them this year, and the fact that they're sitting here at 500 after 12 games, yeah. I mean, they lost to the Jets, which is unbelievable. They won their next three, and Josh Allen was on a trajectory to be the MVP of the league. Then they had to go to London. Then they lost in London. Then they came back, and they just hadn't been the same since until they changed the offensive coordinator 2 weeks ago to Joe Brady. And all of a sudden, Josh Allen's back to playing like Josh Allen again.
Yeah, that team was a heavy favorite that hasn't played well. That team was a favorite for the Super Bowl last year. They haven't played well. The Cinderella story for me is the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts, something like that.
Okay.
Where you'd be like, what in the hell is going on? How is this team winning football games? That, to me, is more of that story.
We got the Buffalo Bills at the Kansas City Chiefs, 4:25 on CBS this Sunday.
Oh, yeah. Let's go. And CBS is rooting for, of course, we know every network that has the Super Bowl roots for these big matchups, but there are a couple out there on the table that would just be beautiful. Just beautiful. And they, of course, involve the Dallas Cowboys, but also you got the Miami Dolphins in the mix as well, and they have not been in that Super Bowl mix for a very, very long time.
As beautiful as the prime rib that came out on your plate last night.
Oh, yeah. That was good.
Man, you housed that thing.
I absolutely did.
Man, you looked like you were going through the electric chair the way you ate that.
Hey, man.
I mean,
I told you I was diving in.
And it was gone, and I felt like I was at a magic show in Vegas.
Yeah, I don't want to waste any time. And I told you yesterday, I gave you the scenario. It's like when you have a zebra that 3 lions are feeding on. They're not wasting any time.
I'm telling you.
That's what it was.
You know how the jackals, they attack.
Yeah.
They don't attack lions, of course, but they do attack gazelles and things of that nature.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, and like when you got 4 or 5 of them on top of a gazelle and they're just ripping it apart. That's what you were doing. You were like a jackal last night.
I was. I am not denying any of that.
Guys, you should have seen this.
I wanted that meat.
He got a slab of meat.
And I just went right. I didn't wait for you guys or nothing. I dialed in. You guys had your conversation. I was one with my meat.
You were
jamming it, cutting it.
It was unbelievable.
Oh, it was great.
And then
I could taste it again right now. Actually, I'm tasting it now.
No, that's the spinach and cheese that you're tasting.
Oh, that was so salty and delicious.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
You all puffy this morning?
Yeah, a little bit. Like my wedding ring, I can't even get off my finger.
So you are puffy.
Yeah, puffy. Yeah, it happens. What happens with the sodium? You get the salty stuff going, you get a little puffy. Yeah,
That's
it was
exactly what it was.
It was a meat man dinner.
There's a lot of meat in the plate.
Let me tell you something. This is one of those restaurants, too, by the way, that I got to give them credit.
Okay.
Because they put, so it's one of these restaurants has a thing in the street.
Yeah.
What do you want to call it? What do we call this? A shack in the street?
If it's not a shack, this is not a shack. I mean, this guy put a lot of money into this
He did.
place.
So it's like whatever you want to call it. They got extra seating in the street. Covered, obviously.
Beautifully covered.
And you walk in there, and it's beautiful. You feel like you're in the most luxurious train car in 1925.
Yes,
that's what it feels like.
That's exactly what it feels like, yes.
So they put you and the person who was hosting us, who's an important man.
Yes.
He is in this shack.
It's not a shack.
And I'm like, wow, who is in there? If you guys are out here, what's going on? And then who walks in and sits behind us is Courtney Cox from Friends, and she's sitting there with 3 of her friends. And I'm like, man, if Courtney Cox, Boomer Esiason, and the guy we're
Courtney
with
Cox and Boomer Esiason
are in the thing in the street,
yes.
who's in the real restaurant?
Well, the real restaurant is relatively small, as you
but
saw.
still.
And it's very hard to get a table in this restaurant. Fort Charles, by the way, is the name of the restaurant.
I mean, by the way.
It's, it's a big prime rib place, but they have other stuff there. It's great. It's an awesome place. And the thing in the street, it's not a hut. It's like, I think you described it perfectly. It reminded me of a really high-end train car.
Yeah.
And it had, what would you say, about 7 booths in it?
Beautiful booths, wallpaper, lighting.
Heat.
I mean, it was insane.
It was very
carpet.
intimate. Very, very intimate.
Windows.
Yeah,
it was insane.
Intimate.
Yeah, it was intimate. So I'm like, man.
And especially when Courtney Cox walked in, you guys weren't paying attention to anything I was saying.
Yeah, I know, we weren't.
Because you guys were looking that way. My back was to her and her group.
Well,
and
I'm
sitting there talking to you guys, and you guys are, your eyes
But Boomer, didn't you want all those things taken away and taken down, ripped down?
I do want them taken down. I think it's a pain in the ass. Could you imagine driving a sanitation truck or a fire truck through the streets of anything? Like I was thinking, and Gio made a point. There was a restaurant in the street right before our restaurant in the street.
Yep. Yeah, it was basically like a birth canal.
Right, exactly.
I mean,
I don't know how you get a truck down that. But I will say this. If I were going to build something in the street, I would do exactly what Fort Charles did.
oh, yeah.
I mean, that thing it's amazing.
It was absolutely tremendous.
I mean, we could have slept over. It was so nice.
It was. But I mean, I like if you're Courtney Cox, though, she's a big star on one of the most popular TV shows in recent memory, multi-millionaires in a current show, and they say, sorry, Mrs. Cox, we got to throw you in the thing in the street. And she still says, okay.
No, but you know what?
That's some good-ass food, right?
Yeah, but the way I'm thinking about it is that it's a very nice private area for her and her friends. It was very private. It was in the back of the caboose.
Staring daggers through her. What do you mean private? I was watching everything she was doing.
Just the 2 maniacs I'm sitting with are doing that, yes. But nobody else even knew she was there, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, maybe not. But, yeah, that was...
I mean, but the food is unbelievable.
Oh, it's great. That was absolutely tremendous.
And the way you slam that meat, man.
I was slamming meat. I'm not, I've got no defense. Everything you're saying is absolutely right.
Kind of felt like Angie was yelling at us, though.
Yes, our server.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was intense.
She was.
She was very intense. Like, she wanted us to order certain things, and she was, bam! She was, like, right there.
She was in your face.
She, unbuttoned her coat. Did you notice that when she first came over?
And she put her hands in her pocket.
Yeah, like it was
the coat came back and said,
"How you?" Whole thing.
You know what she was doing? How you doing?
Yeah, giving us one of those.
Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, she was great. It was
a
great
how
night.
you doing, waitress? How you doing?
It was a great night. It was awesome.
You're gonna have this. You're gonna have that. You're gonna have this.
Right. Yeah, and I'm just like, give me this, and she didn't even ask how I wanted it prepared. She's just like, you're gonna get what we give you. I'm like, okay.
That was like blood red too, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, I felt like
a
prehistoric man. I felt like Homo habilis. No, I felt like a hairy caveman guy living
Attila the Hun.
Yeah, just ripping it apart. You know, sometimes you get that like animalistic stuff. You know, it comes over you because we were hunters and gatherers at one point, and it came over me yesterday in this Fort Charles.
And by the way, before we break quickly, you got to understand what happened to us yesterday. So we were talking about Mama over here on the corner.
Yes.
Right? So a guy that was calling me as we were getting off the air yesterday, remember my phone ringing?
That's right, on the air,
like, who the hell is this? The guy wanted to meet me and Gio at Mama.
Yeah.
And he's not a regular listener at all. I don't think he even knows what we did.
Yeah. No, he had no idea. No clue, nothing.
So, but meet us at Mama.
Yeah.
So we had to go over there and meet at Mama.
And it's crowded as hell. I don't know.
The place is packed.
I was moving a chair over because there's a million people in there. And it's just like, he's like, you're familiar with Mama? Like, of course we are. We spent 15 minutes talking about how packed
that was the weirdest thing ever because he wasn't listening to us.
No, he was not. But it's the only place around here that's open. I'm telling you, it's the hot spot. It's like the Studio 54 of quiche places. Everybody loves that place. It's amazing. All right, it is Boomer and Gio on the Fan, CBS Sports Network. Jerry's back today on this Feel Good Football Friday. We will talk to him in just a couple of minutes.